Hello! After 4 years of relentlessly grinding SMPs, I've boiled down everything I know into this video. This is a complete guide to modern Minecraft SMP. This video will cover PvP, strategies, counter-strategies, and SMP-specific situations. These are a list of timestamps for each section and what you should watch depending on where you're at, but I recommend watching the full video for full information. First, let's get some things out of the way. This is the slang or lingo I'll be using. Second, all of this information was either obtained through past experience, other tutorials, or what people have told me. I really only played Diamond SMP, but a lot of this information can be applied to Netherite SMP as well as SMP Kit. Yeah, there's a difference, but we'll talk about that later. First of all, you'll want to turn on toggle sprint. You'll want this almost always on as it makes comboing and chasing so much easier. View bobbing, FOV effects, distortion effects, and damage tilt can sometimes mess with aim, so I turn it off. Of course, if you want to know when you are receiving damage like poison, lower tilt is still viable. Low FOV will allow for player hitboxes to appear bigger on screen. High FOV will allow you to view more of the world at once. Easier for tracking. Find a comfortable mouse sensitivity in keybinds. I personally use 12345 TGVC, but do whatever is best for you. Getting a low shield and low fire pack is a necessity. I try and stay away from modifications as it removes the feel of vanilla PvP and sometimes borders hacking. We'll start the actual PvP talk now. Ping is huge. Conveyed in MS, standing for millisecond delay, it's how long your inputs take to register to the server. Typically, you'll want low ping, as this makes placement faster and shield faster, low ping being under around 100 ms. Higher ping makes hits, block placements, and shields delayed, which can be trouble, but as messages are sent from the client to the server, messages back from the server will also be delayed. This is why you may feel like high ping players take delayed knockback, reduced knockback, and even reach. Sometimes they'll just walk through cobwebs you place. It's what makes high ping players a little harder to fight, but keep in mind their shield will be slower, so don't switch straight to your axe. Of course, the inverse would be low ping players, being able to shield incredibly fast and frequently. This is equally as annoying. Aiming/tracking and keybinding is the base skill requirement for PvP. After that, it's just a matter of how fast you can play, how well you understand Minecraft physics, what strategies you use, and how well you can improvise. Turning on hitboxes is a good idea, but isn't sustainable, especially if you or your opponent uses a lot of arrows. Also, invisible players don't show hitboxes. When I was first grinding PvP, I used hitboxes for around a month, and afterwards I got used to seeing where the hitboxes were without needing them on. For keybinding, I suggest practicing keybind intensive game modes, such as Axe, going to UHC, going to Crystal. Of course, you don't need to get good at any of these, but getting used to weapon and utility switching is vital for Diamond SMP. Understanding Diamond physics takes time, so there isn't any special method to learn it besides just practicing a bunch. But here are a few tips. When your opponent is in the act of jumping, sprint hit them to deal the most knockback, while if your opponent is about to touch the ground, they'll take minimal to no knockback. Being in the air is bad for multiple reasons. One will be discussed in the next section, but one of the main reasons is because you can't move as well in the air. This makes each jump a commitment towards a certain direction and can be read by your opponent. The sword produces 5 types of hits: strong, weak, critical, sprint, and sweep. Here's a reference chart for what each hit can be used for. Now, I'll try explaining the basic sword mechanics quickly. Having the high ground is almost always a bad idea. I'm sure you've heard it 100 times. Pythagorean theorem, you hit your feet, then you hit the head, you get reach advantage. Stay in school, kids. We'll refer to this as the triangle, or triangling. Your character's point of view or crosshair comes from this area of the hitbox, meaning to get the maximum range of 3 blocks with each hit, you'll want to make eye contact with your opponent when hitting them. Because of how Minecraft's hitboxes are boxes, strafing towards the corner of someone's hitbox will actually give you a slight reach advantage on the first hit. Either way, you'll want to try to aim as straight as possible, but sometimes that isn't an option, especially when you're on the high ground. This is how comboing is made possible. The triangle created from the vertical KB after a sprint hit decreases your opponent's ability to hit you, another reason why being in the air is bad. Sharpness's tutorial on sorting holds most of the information on sword, so I won't talk about it too much here. The video will be linked in the playlist in the description. The real important skills you'll want to learn is jump resetting, hit selecting, peek critting, comboing, and crit chaining. Strafing is also incredibly useful when there is speed, and can be used to hit someone inside their shield. This is where sweep hits are incredibly useful, as you don't want to knock them back, but you also want full control of your movement so you stay on the ground. If you are a beginner, you want to practice sprint resetting and crit chaining on armor stands. Sword tech can be practiced against Theo's bot. Video linked in the description playlist. To practice more realistic sword situations, play Stray.gg or PvP Legacy OP Duels. Axes are better, swords are better. No, there is no best weapon, as different strategies have their pluses, negatives, and counters. Sword is used for comboing, while axes disable shields and acts as burst damage. Notice how I never mentioned DPS, which is usually mentioned when comparing the two. That's because it doesn't matter a whole bunch. Story time! Once I was allowed to change the PvP restrictions on an SMP, and decide to lower the armor protection and make the axe into netherite. And make the sword into iron. Yeah, quite a few people didn't like that. But this actually created an inflated situation parallel to what we were just discussing. Even though the sword did less damage, people were still able to use it to combo any axe player that was caught off their spacing. The sword's unique cooldown allows for effective comboing and quicker follow-ups. Back to the normal kit, sword is mainly used for its ability to deal a lot of damage quickly, but saying the axe doesn't have DPS would be a massive understatement. You just have to work around the cooldown. Axe maining is using an axe as your main weapon. Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. This forces a player to sacrifice their shield or take all of the axe damage in hopes of recovering in some other way. There are two ways to perform this, with shield or spacing. Players can only reach up to 3 blocks, meaning if you were to back away to wait for cooldown, and then re-enter the range to deliver a hit, you can effectively avoid cooldown punishment. This is called spacing. Using a shield, you can quickly block sword attacks as you wait for the axe to recharge. This can be easily done against players that can't disable shields, but can be easily countered if your opponent knows how to stun. We'll go over that in a minute. Spacing also has its weaknesses. However, just using an axe is very risky since, even with good spacing, it becomes easy to predict and easily punishable. Axe is best used when first entering an exchange, or if you need an extra hit on an enemy. But when your opponent is in a web, their shield is broken, or are in close quarters, it's more beneficial to crit with the sword. Shields are possibly the most broken item in Minecraft, able to block pretty much anything with 1 iron and some wood. It's essential to PvP, as its only weakness being an axe. Shields have a 0.5 second delay before they actually function. This leaves a player slightly vulnerable for that half a second, as they have decreased momentum, can't use any items, and can't block attacks. However, during this time, their shield can't be disabled either, so you could pretend to shield to make your opponent switch to an axe, but utilize the 0.5 second delay to keep the shield and make your opponent lose their cooldown. This is called shield feinting, and it's really annoying to deal with, but it's really fun to do. There are 3 methods to disable a shield: spam clicking, axe maining, and property swapping. Property swapping, or the sword keybind into axe and left click strat, counters shield feints and has its own video linked in the playlist in the description. The primary use of shields is to block bows, break combos, shield combo, and replace armor durability. Since shields reset your sprint, all you need to do is hold W and hold shield in between hits for a shield combo. Reading shields is guessing when your opponent will hold up their shield to disable it. Typically, people will shield as they enter an exchange, when they get hit, or when they finish healing. As you play with someone, you can start picking up on when they shield and adapt to their playstyle. When you disable someone's shield, you can also stun, which is double-clicking in quick succession to disable and then weak hit the player. Because they're shielding, their momentum is slowed and weak hitting launches the player slightly in the air, allowing you to start a combo because of the triangle! You can also spam click when holding up a shield to automatically hit whenever your shield is broken. This can be used to strategically sacrifice your shield to start a combo or get free hits. You can also do this cool trick Swipe taught in this video, linked in the playlist. These basically include most other things besides sword, axe, and shield. Bows can be used to chip armor damage, drain saturation, bow boost, harming arrow spam, or finish opponents. The bow isn't typically used to kill in normal kits, because compared to sword DPS, it's just not as effective. However, it becomes a different story with harming 2 arrows. By barely charging the bow and removing power, each arrow will do 2 hearts of damage, which can easily kill anyone not ready for it. Crossbows are super underrated, as with the piercing enchantment you could deliver debuffs directly through the opponent's shields. Viable debuffs being Poison 1, Slowness 1, for its ability to slow players that are running, Slowness 4, for messing with people's combos, Slow Falling, as it prevents crits, and Weakness, for obvious reasons. Debuff tipped arrows are busted in general, as a stack of debuff arrows is worth way more than 1 slot of the normal potion. There are 2 ways to use ender pearls, being short and long. Short pearling is the act of aiming lower to teleport quickly away. This is good for disengaging for a quick heal, but be aware your opponent will also have the ability to chase pearl after you. Typically, if you want to run from a fight, re-gear, or mend your armor, you'll want to long pearl. Pearl juking, or throwing multiple pearls to shake off pearl chasing, is generally used to run from a fight. Always keep 3 or more pearls in your inventory in case you need to run, as you never know what your opponent has planned pre-fight. To short pearl quicker, you can pearl at the acceleration of your jump. This will make your short pearl quicker and a long pearl farther. Quick random tech, elytras are faster than pearls, meaning you can chase long pearls really well with it. Chorus Fruit acts similarly to ender pearls, as you can use them to get out of cobwebs, be it a longer time sacrificing armor durability. You can also use this to escape by teleporting into a cave. Chorus also prioritizes higher Y levels, so you could lure your opponent underground and eat a Chorus Fruit to teleport back to the surface. I went over other movement options in this video, linked in the playlist. Experience bottles are used to mend your armor and shield. Armor durability is healed randomly and becomes an issue when all 4 pieces are randomly healed. This can create imbalances in armor durability, causing some pieces to break way before others. This creates 2 ways to mend, this being safe mending and smart mending. Typically your helmet, boots, leggings, and then chest plate break because of differing durability. So because of armor spread, taking off pieces of armor to prioritize others is called smart mending, which can be done to more equally distribute durability. However, obviously, if you were to take off your armor, your opponent will attack you. So the alternative is to safe mend, which is just spam clicking XP bottles with all your armor on. This may result in uneven mending or loss of XP because of armor spread, but is useful if your opponent is aggroing. Don't forget, if you have a mending shield, you'll lose more XP, so take it off when you mend regardless. Potions! Yes, potions. We'll count that as utility for this video. Fire resistance is a must-have, as while fire doesn't do a lot of damage, it slows you down and breaks your armor, which can be detrimental to a fight. Have at least 3 fire resistance when entering a fight, and more if you plan on playing Drain. You want most of your inventory to be strength 2, as being able to do the most damage is what's going to win you the most exchanges, and having the highest chance of killing an unsuspecting player. You only have this much because it only lasts for 1:30. This is actually an issue since once you run out of strength 2 potions, you no longer do much damage. So having a few strength 1 potions in your inventory is really good for when you run out of strength 2 in long drawn out fights. Mind you, fights can take forever. We'll get into why in the next section. But first, let's talk about everything else. Speed isn't super worth, as strength is the main potion you'll want to be filling your inventory with. Still, being able to chase an opponent is good, so having some speed 1 is always a good advantage to have over your opponents if they forget to bring some speed. However, if you were to jump an opponent, having speed 2 is very worthwhile, as it'll allow you to rush down your opponent before they have a chance to heal. Jump boost can be used to time your axe hits, but again, being in the air leaves you vulnerable, so it isn't such a great idea. Health pots are good, but they take up a lot of inventory space, so they shouldn't be prioritized over strength. This is the same for regeneration. Health arrows solve the inventory issue, but they also deal armor damage, which isn't the most ideal trade-off. Turtle Master... yeah, that's level 1. Need I say more? It's useful to save from death and help survive traps. Haste is unobtainable as a potion, but it does increase attack speed. The only significant level of haste to remember is haste 5. This is when the axe attack speed becomes similar to a sword, and if you have this, you won't have to worry about shields ever again. However, this would require a plugin or mod added to the server. It isn't possible to get haste 5 in normal Minecraft. Slow falling, weakness, poison, harming 2, and slowness are all valid debuffs. Slow falling and weakness being the best in my opinion. Make sure to throw debuffs directly at a person's hitbox, as it'll give them the maximum duration. Potting on the head gives the max duration of the potion, while potting on the ground gives around 10 seconds less. Potion duration is really big, especially since it's easy to hit someone while they're trying to repot. But if you're mid-exchange, it'd be worth to pot on the ground. If your opponent does this, try to sprint hit them up so they miss their pots. While cobwebs are counted as utility, I'm giving them their own section, as they're possibly the most complicated part of Diamond SMP, as its mechanics work separately from sword and axe. Okay, but first, I'd like to come back to what I was saying from the start. This is the Netherite SMP kit, and this is the SMP tier list kit for ranked fighting. You might notice the lack of cobwebs, and this is because cobwebs are not actually the meta. If you were to have many pearls, cobwebs will barely do anything, and is the main reason why you don't see webs in this kit. Quite a few SMPs will have a limit on the number of pearls you can have at once, and some people just don't carry many pearls on them. So then, let's talk about cobwebs. Cobwebs can be used defensively or offensively in numerous ways. Cobwebs reduce opponent movement to pretty much nothing and removes their ability to jump and thus crit. That's pretty good! However, cobwebs aren't hard to break at all, so you'll have to hit your opponent up with a sprint hit, or if they're standing still, crit, and then place a cobweb to suspend them mid-air. The higher the player is placed, the better, because I'll let you take a guess. Yeah, that's right, it's because it's a trying. Being in the air makes cobwebs much harder to get out of, and gives you the opening to deal massive DPS. Cobweb counters. The water bucket allows you to break cobwebs extremely quickly, 0.5 seconds. And the fact that it's also an infinite resource while webs aren't makes this a crucial item to have in your inventory. This is also the reason why draining has become a popular strategy on SMPs. Typically, people will place their water where it's most convenient, directly on top, so players with empty buckets will predict when their opponent will water to drain them. Typically on SMPs, there are rivers and oceans, so getting drained isn't too bad, right? Well, if you're low enough, getting your water drained could get your opponent a few extra hits in, which could mean death. To counter draining, you either hit your opponent away from the web, because you can still sprint hit in a web if you have it toggled, or place water in a harder spot to drain. However, this is all if you choose to water at all. You could of course pearl or course, but let's say you don't want to use any of your precious pearls for running. What do? Well, counter webbing is a good option. After hit webbed, your opponent can choose to do a few things. Comboing you in the web utilizing the triangle to make sure you never get hit, start critting you out, or a mix of both. Blocks can be placed at a further distance than you can hit. Remember, this will be useful later. This means you can place another web as soon as you're hit web so your opponent can't crit or strafe. This then comes down to whoever can shield finesse better. Comboing at a safe distance is possibly the safest option for an opponent to do in this case, as even if webbed, they can always just back out since they're ground webbed. Okay, so yeah, that was all from one hit web. Cobwebs are kind of complicated. I'll go over some web tricks, but won't go too into it, as web theory will be discussed more in the positioning section. So we already know hit webbing is standard. You can also ground web. Using this, you can get a quick heal or cancel combos. Even though you can break ground webs easily, you shouldn't underestimate them, as someone who walks out of a ground web can be easily sprint hit back into it for a future hit web. This also works for any previously placed cobwebs. If fighting in an area or somewhere with lots of webs, constantly be aware of your surroundings, as the worst way to die is getting caught off guard by a random web you placed and forgot about. The vice versa is trying to combo people into pre-placed webs, saving you webs while being unpredictable. Lev webbing is more of a party trick than anything, but you never know when it could be useful.
Why are you using string? It's better to use carpets or pressure plates because they have a smaller hitbox.
Saves inventory. Let's say you forgot to bring buckets to drain. You could web drain by predicting when your opponent places their water and places another web on top to delete their water. A little wasteful, but it could go a long way. Typically, players will only use their water for the 0.5 seconds before they pick it back up. This means you could phantom web, or placing webs back after they're watered. This can be used to catch an opponent off guard, allowing for more damage. You could do this continuously, but it does get resource inefficient pretty fast. If you are running, you can place a web to stop your opponent, giving you time to heal. This can be done two ways. First being to place it underneath you, as you reach the apex of your jump and are not facing the block in front of you. The second is flicking a 180 to see your opponent, and then place a web before they can react. The second is faster, but requires good aim. Web bubbling is placing webs at your feet to protect yourself from melee attacks. This could save you from death, and numerous people have used this to come back from half a heart. However, it's very common for people to create incomplete bubbles, so please, I can't even count how many times I've killed someone because they've left their hitbox exposed. An exit bubble is the same function repurposed, bubbling, pearling, and then holding your shield. I don't typically like to use this as it uses a lot of resources, but it's good if your opponent uses carts. Quick random tech. When your head is in a cobweb, blocks will be placed inversely. This is because the game treats it like you're actually placing the block where you're looking. This inverse placement property is what makes web bubbling so good. Let's say someone's breaking the bottom of the web so they can hit you but you can't hit them. Smart move. You could just look up and place a web to repair your bubble. And of course look down if they break the web on your head. The only counters for web bubbling would be to use harming 2 arrows or place water. Tipped arrows are typically banned on SMPs nowadays, and placing water doesn't let you crit them, allowing them to heal anyways. And so, the most popular bubble cancelling strategy is to use buttons.
Actually, you can use levers, pressure plates, item frames, redstone.
They all have the same functionality. Buttons are cheaper and can be crafted in the official Diamond SMP tier list kit. So I don't want to hear any slander against my buttons. The main source of healing in SMPs is golden apples. They give you half of full saturation, 2 absorption hearts, and you can eat it without missing hunger. I already discussed alternate healing sources in this video, so I won't go over it, linked in the playlist. Saturation is the main reason why golden apples are good for healing. You can get the apple skin mod to show your saturation since it's invisible in regular Minecraft. Saturation can be stored, which is why you see people pre-gapping. Saturation is converted to health once damage is taken at a rate of 1.5 saturation points per 1 health point, meaning a full bar of saturation will essentially give you 6.5 extra hearts. Typically, you'll hear people say, triple gap to get max saturation, which is only kind of true. Gaps give 9.6 saturation points, meaning eating 3 will give you a full saturation bar. But there's really no point in eating the 3rd gap to get the extra 0.8 saturation. Eating just 2 will grant the player 19.2 saturation out of 20, and that last 0.8 won't even regenerate half a heart. However, let's say you've already taken damage. You'll then want to eat enough golden apples to get to full health and 14 plus saturation points to spare. It takes 1.61 seconds for a player to eat something, not including any lag, and sword crits deal 2 hearts per hit every 0.6 seconds. So assuming you start gapping as soon as they hit you, you'll want to gap above 6 hearts. That's really high. Yeah, that's why saturation is so important, so you'll want to always keep it up. However, that's only if they land all 3 possible crits on you, and that's just mathematically speaking. You could pearl, web bubble, hit web, ground web, or any other insert strategy to survive below 6 hearts. The slightest bit of regeneration could save your life, as even in region 1, you'll regenerate a heart before they can deal 3 crits. If there's a cap on golden apples, then it's smart to eat a Garret first followed by a gap, as it will give you the max saturation, absorption, and conserve golden apples. It takes 4 seconds for hunger to drain after saturation, so if you plan on using Garrets to conserve, you'll have to make sure to stall out time for your hunger to lower. If you get below 4 hearts in any situation, you might as well start praying. Many of my shorts and videos have some pretty interesting strategies, but here are some I haven't mentioned yet. Tunneling is a very popular and efficient way to run from a fight from multiple people. Why? This is because the runner has the ability to dig in any direction they want, while also being in the one control of the path players take to get to them. The method I thought of to stop this would be to use spectral arrows. Although it doesn't last long, it'll give you an idea of where they're going and which blocks to break. Speaking of tunneling, a lot of players like to dig up like this. Don't do this. By breaking a block and immediately placing it underneath, it shrinks the amount of space you occupy, thus making it harder for you to be found. You should almost always be using a shield, as is extremely beneficial and has almost no downsides. By having a totem in your hotbar, you can easily keybind to it in order to activate it rather than having to constantly have it in your offhand. Be aware that many servers won't register the immediate input, so you'll have to swap to it sooner or else you'll ghost a totem. You can also ghost a water bucket, so always make sure you actually have it and it didn't magically disappear. If you're on a server with people using maces, it's good to carry slow falling, as it not only prevents people from critting, but it also prevents them from macing. TNT minecarts not allowed? Well, TNT can actually still insta-kill a player in Diamond Prop 4. This only works if the player is right next to it though, so catching a player in a web bubble has the best chance for it to happen. Do remember that a player will still have the time duration to eat a gap followed by a chorus fruit to completely dodge the TNT, so it's best used if the player is focused on other things, or do this. Double potting is a weird feature, where if you pot a tier 1 followed by a tier 2 pot, both durations will run at the same time. This is useful in case you don't want to repot mid-fight, and you still want to continue aggroing. Remember how you can place further than you can hit? Some people use this to catch running players by placing a cobweb, or lava if you're in UHC. This catches a player off guard and can be useful in sneaking in a kill. How do you create strategies? I get this question a lot, but to be honest, I just sit in the creative mode scrolling through potential items. I actually tried mapping out every possible use for each item and mob. It isn't that good. Either way, to create a strategy, you have to identify an issue or feature and repurpose or innovate on it. An example would be the first video I ever made on this channel. A few months prior to creating this video, I had 1v1 Foray MC and won. And lost, but none of that matters. But what does matter is the fact that I overanalyzed the recording after the fight, with the thought in mind that Foray was a perfect player. He's not, but he's a good reference point. Right here in our fight, he messed up. Why? It's because he's a UHC player, and he's used to experienced players draining him. So the strategy he uses to counter draining is by placing the water on the other side instead of the top, since the player will usually try to drain from the top. The issue here was the water flowed in one direction because that's just Minecraft. So what if you were to artificially create holes in the ground to force them to place the water on top? And thus, sewage draining was born 1 week later. Final and last example would be the Iron Golem strategy. I once played on a server with the Soul Orb plugin that allowed players to transport mobs while keeping them completely frozen in time, saving their data. Some players use this to trap withers or charge creepers, while I used it to transport iron golems, since when I offhand iron, it basically creates an invincible second player, forcing each fight into a 1v2. Get the gist? Minecraft is a sandbox game, and that allows you to use even the dumbest features into effective PvP strategies. It's a science, with new elements being discovered and added every so often. But jeez, Mojang, please make potions more viable already, like, oh my... I've been leaving out explosions in most of the sections up until now, since if they're allowed, use them. I don't know what else to say. They're undoubtedly the best weapons in the game. They're just typically not allowed on servers. Crystal tutorial linked in the playlist. Just be careful not to blow up someone's house. Okay, but what about TNT minecarts? While there is a tutorial on minecart PvP, having blast protection and having standard protection makes all the more difference. In normal prot hard mode, carts will pretty much insta-kill. In lower difficulties, cart damage is massively decreased, which means you'll want to use carts as burst damage only to get your opponent low or as a finishing blow. It's also viable to pre-rail in Diamond SMP. Even though it's slower than insta-carting, your opponent will still die in one shot and can't break the minecart. Shields now fully block explosions, so you'll either have to disable it prior, rail bait, or do it faster than they can shield. Crossbow carting is the earliest way to instantly kill someone. Only requiring these items, you can one-shot even maxed Blast Prot 4 players. It's a lot harder to learn, and it's a little risky as it requires 3 hotbar slots. Damage also varies randomly, so you won't always kill your opponent. If they have full netherite blast protection 4, it'll still always one-shot a diamond player in Pro 4. Positioning is how I personally think about the game. I have no idea if other people do this, but this is a way to calculate risk and sustain in fights. The basic premise is that fights are consisted of exchanges, and with each exchange, players start neutral and then shift into positive and negative positions. After various disengagements and re-engagements, whoever wins the most exchanges will win in the end, whether it be by armor or by health. We'll go over some of the positions first. You've been webbed! This results in you being in a negative position, soon to be worse if your opponent continues to hit you. By bucketing, you'll be hit a few times, resulting in the following negative position. However, by performing a counter web, you'll put your opponent in the same disadvantage, thus making the position neutral. The real reason I believe Cobwebs to be the best part of Diamond SMP is its ability to force anyone into a disadvantage in an instant. There are numerous ways to gain advantages and create disadvantages, so here are a list. Disengaging is when you periodically leave the fight to heal to full health. This can be done with a bow boost, pearl, or if you and your opponent silently agree to disengage. During this phase, you can regen to full, mend some of your armor, or repot. You don't have to count armor or health damage every exchange, but do take into consideration who wins which exchange in what way. This allows you to know if you'll win a fight by reviewing how many exchanges you've won. The 2 playstyles I'm most familiar with are Drain and Pressure, Pressure being the one I typically use. I'll explain Drain first. Drain fighting is essentially fighting for armor and resources. If someone is good at healing, it's pretty hard to kill someone, so generally it comes down to whoever has the most resources, which is why Drain is so popular. Since restocking is typically not allowed on many competitive servers, Drain fighting is an effective way to ensure a win. In terms of positioning, you'll want to keep the fight in a general neutral direction. with you winning each exchange on resources by conserving health and utility. Axes and bows are extremely good for chipping armor damage, and you'll see many Drain players comboing rather than critting, as well as bow boosting a lot more. Pressure playstyle is all about keeping your opponent on the disadvantage. This is a more aggressive version of Drain, as your goal is to not only drain the opponent's resources quicker by aggroing relentlessly when your opponent experiences the slightest disadvantage. Some people call this not hopping off. I call it forcing a calculated position. By using cobwebs and crits, you can keep the opponent in negative positioning, forcing them to constantly heal and get out of webs. Continuous pressure will allow you to win either by health or by resources. Compared to passive Drain, you'll most likely be able to kill the player by health. However, it's a little more risky and doesn't ensure you'll win. I'll now go over 2 fights, one in Strength 1 and one in Strength 2, so you can see how I think mid-fight and how I talk about pressuring and positioning. Starting off with neutral, I've noticed that Ibby does not actually use that much web bubbling, so I can actually safely remove some of this stuff in my inventory bar to create room for more stuff. I'm going to win this exchange because I have saturation. Ibby does not heal. Did not get the golden apple off in time. This would be an effective time to web bubble. Pearl though, for some reason. That definitely would have worked. But you know, it is quite close when you web bubble. It's a little uncomfortable. We're equal, but I'm gonna we're both gonna eat a golden apple to stay alive. He's gonna eat 2, but I pressure. Maybe just not get the second off, so that second did not work. And Ibby's going to die if they do not heal effectively. I suck at the game, so it's fine. I almost died there. Ibby did not use the, what's the word? Bro. I can't think right now. Either way, pretty equal playing field. I just tanked so many hits because my game just stopped working for a second. Re-strength because I forgot. Getting that strength duration, I see. Pressure. No saturation. Aggro. Rolling is supposed to kill you or no? What is it? It's not okay. Oh, and a hit web. I'm now going to win this exchange because of the hit web. Oh, bro! Okay, thank goodness. I thought I was gonna lose that again. Still, because I always forget anyways. And if their armor breaks first, then... Nice, okay. If he would have been caught with their armor off for a second there. And that truly would have been a little unfortunate. That's why smart ending is a little dangerous, but usually worth it. Usually. That was a good hit web, got a lot of good hits in. Ibby has no saturation, is going to die if they don't heal. I'm going to die if I don't heal. Diamond SMP is all about saturation, since actual health is like you're going to die if you don't have saturation with you. Oh, and with that, oh no, didn't go through. You were so lucky in like several multitudes. Okay. Well, there we go. Hold on, I'm gonna move my environment around me as I can see a cobweb right behind Ibby. I'm going to use that as a border, as kind of like a you can't go past this line, and I'm going to hit you into it. Caught off guard, and leads to the win with the short pearl. I'm going to use golden apples more conservatively this time, as we're using strength 1. So. Hit select, hold with the W tap.
I'm not gonna commentate that much because it's gonna like I low-key gotta focus in for strength 1. Because you can either mess up really badly or win. Environment. Lucky. As you can see, I just suck at Minecraft, so that's why AP survived.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell.
Hey. I can get my golden carrot. I'm a genius. I'm like Einstein. But without all the good parts. Just the Minecraft PvP part. Oh my gosh! That was a devious combo. Holy. But I'm okay, so I don't have to use the golden apples. Ready for that chip to start? Another Garrett? Oh! Yo, I'm now. That's kind of suck. Okay, we're gonna. Did that work? It's maybe for the win. No. That's safe. Love the environment. That's why you should be eco-friendly. Probably should have aggroed there, but like I only ate a golden carrot. You probably didn't see that. Oh my gosh, this guy's waiting for the golden carrot. Okay. You will not. I will not let them fight. Please. Okay. Oh, you're dead. No. Oh, armor broke first. Instead of mending, I'm just gonna put background. Low-key, I could probably do that. If my armor breaks as well, then that's GG's. But I think I can win that exchange. GG.
Now this tutorial isn't completely just about PvP as the title states. This is because unlike raw PvP skill and tier list ranking, SMPs take place in survival Minecraft, meaning the pre-fight matters more than the actual fighting. You'll unfortunately have to use your brain, and you'll have to think of strategies and traps and all that stuff. For inspiration, you could look at Dragon MC's newest video, as it really shows how you can kill someone even if they're better at you, just by establishing good pre-fight situations. This is a basic TNT minecart trap. The TNT minecarts being activated by this observer and fall for activation. It's built like this. You can slow down the video if you don't understand. There are many variations to this TNT trap, but I'll go over one other, being the same thing except it's end crystal ignition. By putting an end crystal in the floor and covering its middle, it becomes virtually invisible. By using an arrow, the hitboxes will clip slightly into the ground, setting off the rest of the minecarts by proxy explosion. Setting up contraptions like XP banks will allow you to have the upper hand in a fight, and setting up numerous card traps will definitely allow you to win a few fights. But is there a way to counter card traps? Well, you could use F3A, which is a technique that allows you to see entities through walls, or use the entity counter in the F3 screen. This number tells you the number of entities in your field of view. If your enemies are the type of people to place a bajillion minecarts, you'll be able to see it. Not only that, but you can pyrate. By pressing Shift F3 or Shift 1, tick, level, entities, you'll be able to see if a TNT minecart is in your render distance. You may need to refresh every once in a while. Setting up fall traps is also a good idea, and I already made a video on that. Wow, so convenient, link to the playlist. First things first, traveling in the nether is 8 times faster than the overworld, so always have obsidian inflate and steel so you can portal travel. This is also useful for running in case you've escaped underground and your opponents are searching for you. In the new version of Minecraft 1.21, you're able to pearl through portals. No longer do you have to wait for the portal loading transition. The issue with this in older versions was that people chasing you could break the portal by placing water on the obsidian. Not only this, but you're able to straight up run from any fight as long as the nether portal is in reach now. However, any desperate player will now be willing to head through any portal, making it infinitely easier to trap a player as well. By creating a trap on the other side of the portal, you can effectively punish players trying to abuse this feature. Just make sure you tell your teammates. Okay, but let's say you don't have any pearls or the server doesn't allow it. You're running to a portal to get out, but your opponent will break it. What can you do? What you can do is place blocks against the portal frames, preferably obsidian to block yourself in, and you can escape. If you're running from nether to overworld, you can quickly break the portal behind you. This will pretty much guarantee your attackers will generate a new portal somewhere else. To make a base, you'll need to find and capture at least 2 villagers. Villages tend to spawn in plains, deserts, savannas, and taigas, but can spawn in any of these other biomes. People will typically either use minecarts or boats to transport villagers, but the best way to transport villagers, in my opinion, is a combination between boats and workstations. By sprint hitting the corner of a boat, you can reliably and quickly move a villager across spaces of land, but it's honestly better to just boat them across the ocean. Using workstations to move villagers up slopes, this is the method I use to transport my villagers. The 2 ways I typically make my bases are the pit design and automatic design. Starting with the automatic design, I throw 2 villagers into a 2x2 hole and create an automatic villager breeder inspired by Logic Geek Boy. Video linked in the playlist. Looks something like this. Put a torch here so you can place a block here. This will be used to turn the breeder off. This end section has a series of trapdoors for separating villagers for zombification. This is the design I've used for 3 years, and it works alright. But by far the most efficient way I've seen people set up bases is by using the pit design. By digging a large 3-deep hole and placing all of the beds in the village in it, at night most of the villagers will pathfind towards the pit to sleep. Once all of the villagers are experiencing the illusion of free housing, you can either place fences or walls around the pit so zombies don't sneak in, and place a few carpets around so you can jump over the walls. Other mobs cannot do this. Depending on how many villagers you've captured, you might want to breed more. If there are hay bales at the village, turn it into bread and throw it into the pit. but you can also buy large amounts of bread from farmers. You'll want an armorer, toolsmith, and weaponsmith for their corresponding piece of the diamond set. Then you'll want to prioritize librarians for the protection, unbreaking, mending, and sharpness. You'll be able to get more enchantments in the later game, but these are the most important ones. Fletchers and farmers can come in handy for their own trades. You can use the Minecraft wiki to find out which trades come from which villagers, link in the description. There are 4 main ways to earn emeralds: melons and pumpkins, clay, sticks, and string, with their own respective villager and workstation to sell to. I don't think I need to explain pumpkins and melons, but make sure your axe has Silk Touch and Efficiency 5. This will allow you to instantly break the blocks, and Silk Touch for keeping the melons from breaking. Also make sure the melons and pumpkins will be growing on dirt, otherwise they won't grow. Clay can be found in abundance in rivers, while sticks can be grown from large spruce trees. Make sure there are no blocks surrounding it. String dupers are kind of weird, as they're honestly the best way to grind emeralds late and early game, but they have 2 versions. One that can be made on paper servers, and one that can be made on every other server. This is how you make a string farm in normal servers. Remember, it has to be facing south. If you want a more in-depth tutorial, you can search one up. You can also chain these up next to each other, but I have yet to find a way to wire all of them together reliably. This is how you make a string farm on a paper server. Notice how it only dupes 1 string instead of 2. That's why it's a little worse. However, wiring more of them together is extremely easy. I actually made 100 of these. Twice. Anyways, grinding golden apples is essential, as we've discussed how important healing is in PvP. You can either make a gold farm or mine nether gold with Silk Touch and smelt it. You could also fortune mine gold in a mesa, which is actually beneficial as mine shafts frequently spawn there, giving you cobwebs on top of all the gold. Of course, if you don't want to grind, yeah, link in the description. It's better to mine diamonds with fortune 3 in a large cave than strip mining. But make sure you light up where you go, as even in Prop 4, too many mobs can still end up killing you. You can find a big cave by either finding an opening at the surface, or just digging straight down and being lucky. I do this all the time. There really isn't a high chance you mine and die to lava, so as long as you have something like a hay bale to clutch on, digging straight down isn't an issue. Hey, you made it! I feel so sorry for you. Unlike most of my videos on this channel, in the comments I'll only be hearting important information I missed, corrections to the information I provided, and future tech and strategies. I encourage you to read the comments for any useful information others have to offer, as friendly discussion is vital for learning. Please be nice to each other. I highly encourage you to share this with whoever needs the information contained in this video, as I'm guessing this will be helpful for many other players. So, what am I gonna do now? This is most likely going to be the last video on this channel. So, like I said on my previous video, this was always meant to be a library for future players to look back into. I'll be starting a new project and be posting my final video on my main channel. After, I'll be finally free from the Minecraft community. Again, thanks for watching, and bloom tomorrow's flowers.